We want to spend Christmas quietly with your daughter's in-laws. My daughter wrote in a text message, brushing me aside after decades of everything I had given her. I answered with a short, polite reply. I hope you enjoy yourselves. What she did not know was that I had already invited everyone else to my brand new place, where the holiday plans were coming together beautifully without them. When they eventually saw the photos, they would rush into my home and do something I never imagined. And even before that moment arrived, I knew with absolute certainty they would regret it. My phone vibrated against the cool granite countertop. I set my coffee mug down carefully and glanced at the screen. A message from my daughter. For a split second, a small, hopeful smile crept across my face. I assumed she was finally confirming Christmas dinner plans. Instead, the words landed like a punch to the chest. We want to spend Christmas quietly with the in-laws. I read the sentence once, then again, as if repetition might soften it. Sunlight poured through the wide kitchen windows, bright and cheerful, completely out of sync with the heaviness that settled over me. That single message felt like it tore through the peaceful retirement I had planned so carefully. I clenched my phone until my knuckles turned pale. 30 years. 30 long years of showing up for every emergency, every request, every crisis she ever had. The memories rushed in, sharp and unforgiving. I remembered paying her college tuition at a private university in North Carolina. $60,000 a year, even after she switched majors 3 times. Dad, I really think psychology is my calling now, she had said. Then it was communications. Then business administration. I covered every invoice without a word of protest. Then came her wedding to Evan. My share alone totaled $45,000. We want it to be perfect, Dad. This only happens once in a lifetime. I watched her spin across the dance floor in a designer gown that cost more than many people's cars, while Evan's parents contributed warm smiles and a decorative fruit platter. Last year, it was the down payment on their house. Another $80,000. We found the perfect place, Dad, she told me excitedly. It is in such a great neighborhood for when we have kids. The children never arrived, but the financial requests certainly did. Every phone call followed the same script. Dad, I hate to ask, but she never hated it enough to stop asking. Car repairs, credit card balances, vacation expenses, remodeling projects. The list stretched back for decades. And every time, I gave. I always gave. I walked over to the window overlooking my manicured backyard. This villa, purchased just last month for $2.8 million in Scottsdale, Arizona, was supposed to be my reward, my refuge, the place where I would finally host Christmas dinner the way I always imagined. A place where my family would see what their father had built through decades of disciplined investing and careful decisions. The digital asset portfolio that made me wealthy while everyone else mocked it as reckless speculation. The technology startup investments that paid off when people told me I was too old to understand modern markets. The consulting firm that flourished because I never stopped learning or adapting. None of it mattered to my daughter. To her, I was nothing more than a living checking account. Sit quietly with the in-laws. In plain terms, that meant my money was welcome, but I was not. The hurt hardened into something colder and far more resolved. I had spent enough years being taken for granted. It was time to show everyone what Christmas looked like when people actually wanted to be there. I opened my contacts and scrolled until I found my brother Daniel's name. He had always recognized my daughter's behavior for what it was, even when he stayed silent for my sake. That silence was done. The phone rang twice before his familiar voice answered. Michael, perfect timing. I was just thinking about Christmas. Daniel, I need to ask you something, I said, keeping my tone calm and even. Are you and Emily free for Christmas dinner? I am hosting at the new house. Absolutely, he said without hesitation. Emily has been dying to see the place. What changed? I thought you were going to your daughter's. I glanced at the message still glowing on my screen. Plans changed. She is spending Christmas quietly with her in-laws. There was a pause. Then Daniel's voice came back tight with anger. That is unbelievable. How long are you going to let her treat you like an automatic teller machine? Not anymore, I replied. The words felt unfamiliar, but they also felt right. Can you call Jason and Claire? Let them know they are invited. And the Parkers too, if they are in town. Consider it done, Daniel said. You know what? This is going to be the best Christmas dinner you have ever hosted. Real people. People who appreciate you. After we hung up, I walked through the quiet rooms of my villa, seeing it differently now. The formal dining room with space for 12 guests. The professional kitchen with twin ovens and warming drawers. The entertainment room anchored by a towering stone fireplace and floor-to-ceiling windows. This was more than a house. It was a declaration, and I was finally ready to make it. My next call went to Andrew Miller, a former business partner who had helped negotiate a major electronics acquisition that earned us 7 figures. Then I called Rebecca Sloan, who stood by me when one of my startups went public. These were people who witnessed my achievements, not just my generosity. Andrew Miller speaking. Andrew, it is Michael Harper. I hope I am not calling it a bad time. Never a bad time for you, he replied warmly. What is going on? I explained briefly. Christmas dinner at my place. Close friends only. December 22nd at 6 in the evening. His excitement was immediate. You are serious? Karen and I have been hoping to see that house ever since the photos you sent. Count us in. Each call reminded me of something I had forgotten. I had friends. Real ones. People who valued my presence, not my wallet. I moved into my home office and pulled out a yellow legal pad to plan the menu. Prime rib from a high-end local butcher. Roasted vegetables. Twice-baked potatoes. A classic Caesar salad. And Rebecca's legendary tiramisu, if she agreed to bring it. For wine, I selected a reserve Napa Valley Cabernet from 2018 that I had been saving for the right moment. This was that moment. In the living room, I rearranged the furniture to encourage conversation. The leather sectional angled toward the fireplace. Extra chairs brought in from the formal sitting room. The open layout of the villa was ideal for hosting, exactly why I had purchased it, even if I once imagined different guests filling the space. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, everything was locked in. The catering order was confirmed, the house was spotless, and my guest list was finalized. 10 people. 10 adults who would appreciate both the meal and the company. 10 people who saw me as a human being, not a personal finance solution. Over the course of a single afternoon, the quiet villa had shifted from feeling empty to feeling full of promise. By tomorrow night, this place would finally become exactly what I pictured when I signed the papers. The doorbell would ring soon enough, welcoming the first guest. Right on the dot at 6 o'clock, the chime echoed through the foyer. Through the tall glass panels, I recognized my brother Daniel's familiar outline. He was holding a bottle of wine, and Emily stood beside him with what looked like a covered serving dish balanced carefully in her hands. I opened the door to Daniel's wide grin and Emily's immediate, unfiltered reaction. Good Lord, Michael, Daniel said as he stepped inside. He paused in the middle of the 2-story entryway, taking in the sweeping curved staircase and the crystal chandelier overhead. Pictures do not even come close to doing this place justice. Emily was already drifting farther into the space, her eyes moving over every detail. The craftsmanship alone must have cost a fortune, she said, gesturing toward the walls. And these windows, she pointed to the floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the gardens. This looks like something straight out of a design magazine. Before I could respond, I heard car doors shutting in the driveway. Andrew and Karen Miller stepped out of their sedan, followed closely by Jason and Claire Parker. Within minutes, the entryway filled with laughter, warm greetings, and genuine excitement that felt effortless and real. This is incredible, Karen said, slowly turning in a circle as she took it all in. When you said you bought a place, I pictured something comfortable. This is on a completely different level. Her words landed differently than anything my daughter had ever said. No one was mentally tallying costs or wondering what favors might come later. They were simply happy for me, and that feeling was unfamiliar in the best possible way. I guided everyone through the main living space, pointing out details I had chosen deliberately: the imported stone fireplace, the custom shelving, the high-end sound system hidden seamlessly throughout the room. Each feature was met with sincere admiration. "You really pulled this off," Jason said, giving me a firm pat on the shoulder. All those years of smart investing finally paying off. Rebecca Sloan arrived fashionably late, exactly as expected, carrying the tiramisu she had promised and immediately pulling out her phone. "Michael, you have to let me post pictures," she said. "This house is stunning, and you look happier than I have seen you in years." I nodded without hesitation. I had earned this moment, and I was done pretending otherwise. There was no reason not to share it with people who celebrated my success instead of quietly resenting it. The evening unfolded naturally. Cocktails in the living room gave way to dinner in the formal dining area. The prime rib was cooked perfectly, the wine was exceptional, and conversation flowed easily from shared memories to current projects and future plans. "Do you remember when you first told us you were investing in digital currency?" Andrew said, lifting his glass toward me. "We all thought you had completely lost your mind." "Some of us," Karen corrected with a laugh. "I told him he should follow your lead, but he was too cautious." "Best advice I ever ignored," Andrew admitted. "Look where it got him." I felt something warm settle in my chest. Genuine respect. Genuine appreciation. These were not people looking for handouts. They were friends celebrating a friend's success. Daniel stood and cleared his throat for an impromptu toast. "To my brother, Michael," he said, raising his glass. "A man who never stopped believing in himself, even when the rest of us could not fully see the vision. And to this incredible home, where he is finally getting the Christmas celebration he deserves." Glasses clinked. Laughter followed. And for the first time in years, I felt truly seen. Rebecca had been taking photos all evening. Casual shots of conversations, group pictures by the fireplace, carefully framed images of the dinner table. "These are going straight on social media," she announced. "Everyone should see how beautifully this turned out." I did not object. Let people see what success looked like when it was shared with the right crowd. The gathering was in full swing when my phone started vibrating insistently against my leg. I glanced down through my pocket and felt that familiar tightness return to my chest. "Madison." I excused myself and walked toward my home office, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses fading as I closed the door behind me. I answered calmly, "Hello, Madison. What is this supposed to be?" Her voice was sharp and furious, skipping any attempt at politeness. "Rebecca just posted photos of some huge dinner party at your house. Daniel is there. Everyone is there." I leaned back against my desk, already understanding what had triggered this call. She had seen the posts. "It is Christmas dinner," I said evenly. "You told me you wanted to spend it quietly with your in-laws." "I never said that," she snapped. The denial came so fast and so defensively that I nearly laughed. "Would you like me to read your message back to you?" There was silence. "That is not what I meant," she finally said. "We just wanted something low-key. We want to spend Christmas quietly with the in-laws." I read directly from my phone. "Those were your exact words." What part of that was unclear? "You are being deliberately difficult," she shot back. "You knew what I meant." "No, I did not," I replied. "I understood it to mean you preferred spending Christmas with your husband's family instead of with me. So I made other plans." Her breathing came through the phone fast and uneven. "You went behind my back. You invited everyone except us." "I invited people who wanted to spend Christmas with me," I said. "You made it clear that you did not." There was a pause. Then the real question spilled out. "Where did this house even come from?" she demanded. "How can you afford something like that? Where did this money come from?" There it was. Not hurt over missing dinner. Not disappointment over family traditions. Shock over wealth she did not know existed. Wealth she did not control. "I have been successful, Madison," I said calmly. More successful than you apparently realized. Successful how? She pressed. You never told me about buying a house. You never told me you had this kind of money. Something shifted inside me then, snapping into a cold, steady clarity I had not felt in years. I realized, with sudden certainty, that I did not owe her a financial briefing. I was a grown man who had made smart investments, built a profitable consulting firm, and earned every dollar through 3 decades of discipline and effort. This house was not a mystery or a windfall. It was the direct result of 30 years of work. But, Dad, she started. No. I cut in, sharper than I intended, but honest. I am not going to be guilt for celebrating Christmas with people who actually appreciate me. I am not apologizing for success you were unaware of. And I am not going to pretend your message meant anything other than exactly what it said. The silence between us stretched out, thick and heavy, packed with years of unspoken resentment that finally had room to breathe. You are being spiteful, she said at last. All of this because I cannot come to dinner one time. No, I replied calmly. This is because for 30 years I have been treated like nothing more than a bank account. Because nearly every conversation with you begins with what you need from me, and never with what you might give back. Because my help is expected, not appreciated, and my presence is optional. That is not true, she snapped. When was the last time you called just to ask how I was doing? I asked. When was the last time you showed any interest in my life that had nothing to do with what I could provide for yours? There was no answer. The silence returned, longer this time, louder in its meaning. I have friends in my home tonight, I continued, my voice steady now, who are genuinely happy for my success. People who celebrate my achievements instead of quietly calculating what they can extract from them. This is what Christmas looks like when people actually want to be there. You cannot just exclude your family, she said. Family is family. You excluded yourself, I replied. You made your choice. I made mine. This is not over, Dad, she said, her voice low and threatening. You cannot just cut us out because you are having some kind of midlife crisis. The line went dead. I stood alone in the quiet of my office, the phone still pressed to my ear, absorbing what had just happened. Beyond the closed door, I could hear laughter spilling through the house. Real laughter. Easy conversation. The soft clink of glasses raised in genuine celebration. For the first time in 30 years, I had drawn a boundary. And despite the tension still humming in my chest, it felt right. I slipped the phone into my pocket and reached for the door, ready to return to the people who valued me for who I was, not what I could fund. But her words echoed back at me as my hand hovered over the handle. This is not over, Dad. The weight of that threat settled in. I hesitated, doubt creeping in despite myself. Had I gone too far? Had I been too final? The phone felt heavy in my pocket, like a stone of guilt. 30 years of fatherhood did not vanish with a single confrontation. Images surfaced uninvited. Teaching her to ride a bike. Sitting beside her at the kitchen table helping with homework. Walking her down the aisle on her wedding day. That little girl had grown into someone I barely recognized anymore. Another burst of laughter drifted through the door. Warm. Uncomplicated. Real. I straightened my shirt, caught my reflection in the window, and took a slow, grounding breath. Whatever came next, I would not allow Madison's drama to poison what I had built tonight. I opened the door and stepped back into the glow of the gathering. The contrast hit me immediately. The cold isolation of confrontation versus the warmth of authentic connection. Daniel noticed me right away. His expression shifted from cheerful host to concerned brother in an instant. Michael, everything okay? I nodded subtly toward the kitchen, and he followed me away from the others. The steady hum of conversation gave us enough cover for privacy. She called. I said simply. Daniel's jaw tightened. What did she say? She saw Rebecca's photos online, I explained. Accused me of going behind her back. Demanded to know where the money for this house came from. And she denied ever saying she wanted a quiet Christmas. Of course she did, Daniel said, his tone edged with years of restrained frustration. You have enabled this behavior for 3 decades. She is not upset about Christmas. She is upset about losing control. But what if I am wrong? I said quietly. What if? Stop, Daniel interrupted, gripping my shoulder firmly. She hung up on you, did she not? After making threats? I nodded. That is not how someone behaves when they want resolution, he said. That is how someone reacts when their manipulation stops working. Andrew appeared in the kitchen doorway, concern written across his face. Sorry to interrupt, but we noticed you looked stressed. Everything all right? Before I could deflect, Daniel answered for me. Family issues. His daughter is upset he is hosting Christmas dinner instead of catering to her demands. Andrew's expression darkened with immediate recognition. The entitled adult-child situation. Karen and I dealt with something similar with her brother. 45 years old, and still expected us to bankroll his lifestyle. What did you do? I asked. We cut him off completely, Andrew said without hesitation. Best decision we ever made. He threw a fit, made threats, said he would never speak to us again. 6 months later, he had a job and came back with an apology. Karen joined us then, drawn by the serious tone. Are we talking about family boundaries? She asked. Because I have very strong opinions about that. As the conversation continued, other guests gradually drifted toward the kitchen. Each person shared a version of the same story. Adult children who took advantage. Siblings who demanded support without offering respect. Parents who used guilt as leverage. The hardest part, Rebecca said thoughtfully, is accepting that love does not mean enabling. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. Jason nodded. My father used to say respect is not inherited. It is earned. That applies to family just as much as anyone else. Something loosened in my chest as I listened. These were not strangers offering hollow reassurance. These were friends who had watched me give and give for years, who recognized the pattern I had been too close to see clearly. You do not owe anyone your dignity, Daniel said quietly. Not even your daughter. As the night went on, the earlier tension faded, replaced by renewed warmth and laughter. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but the sense of support remained, steady and reassuring, wrapping around me like a safety net I did not realize I needed. Around 10 o'clock, I was refilling wine glasses when a sudden noise cut through the room. Car doors slamming, heavy footsteps crunching across gravel outside. I glanced toward the front windows, but beyond the soft glow of the landscape lights, there was nothing but darkness. No cars, no movement. Probably the neighbors getting home late, Emily said quietly when she noticed my distraction. I nodded and forced myself back into host mode, but the unease lingered. The footsteps I had heard earlier did not sound casual or tired. They had been heavy, purposeful, and angry. 20 minutes later, the pounding started. It was not a knock. It was not the doorbell. It was violent, furious slamming that made the solid oak door shudder in its frame. Every conversation stopped instantly. Wine glasses froze halfway to lips. 10 faces turned toward the entryway with the same stunned expression. Open this door right now. Madison's voice sliced through the house, sharp and unmistakable. I know you are in there. My stomach dropped. She had actually come here. She had driven all the way across Scottsdale to create a public confrontation in front of my guests. The pounding resumed, harder this time. Bang, bang, bang. Madison, lower your voice. I called through the door, walking toward it with deliberate calm. We can talk about this like adults. Do not tell me what to do, she screamed back. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. This is ridiculous, she continued. You cannot just exclude family because you are having some kind of midlife crisis. Then Evan's voice joined in, weaker, uncertain. Michael, come on. Just open the door. We can work this out. I turned back toward my guests. They had come expecting a warm Christmas dinner and were now trapped in the middle of a family explosion. I could see embarrassment, disbelief, and anger on my behalf reflected across their faces. I am sorry about this, I said quietly. Daniel stepped forward immediately. Do not apologize. You are not responsible for her behavior. The pounding intensified again. I knew the neighbors would hear it. By morning, the entire street would know about my family drama if I did not stop this now. I reached for the deadbolt. The second it clicked open, the door flew inward with enough force to slam against the wall. Madison stormed inside like a force of nature. Evan followed a step behind, shoulders slumped, wearing the expression of a man who had long since surrendered control of his own life. How dare you? She shouted, pointing a trembling finger at me while scanning the room. How dare you throw some big party and exclude your own daughter? The living room fell dead silent. The only sound was the steady ticking of the clock above the fireplace. 10 pairs of eyes watched my 32-year-old daughter throw a tantrum that would have embarrassed a child. Madison, you are making a scene, I said evenly. I do not care, she snapped, spinning around to take in the elegant furnishings, the crystal stemware, the polished surfaces that screamed expense. Where did all of this come from? How long have you been hiding money from me? Rebecca stepped forward slightly, phone still in her hand. Excuse me, but this is a private dinner party. You are being incredibly rude. Madison's attention snapped to her. You are the one posting pictures online. This is all your fault. I posted photos of a beautiful home and a lovely evening with friends, Rebecca replied calmly. There is nothing inappropriate about that. It was inappropriate because I was not invited. You declined, I said quietly. In writing. That is not what I meant, and you know it. The absurdity of the situation was now obvious to everyone present. A grown woman, furious that her father had dared to celebrate Christmas with people who actually wanted to be there. Andrew's voice cut through the chaos. Ma'am, you need to calm down. This behavior is completely unacceptable. Do not tell me what is acceptable, Madison snapped, whirling toward him. This is between me and my father. Not anymore, Daniel said firmly, his voice carrying unmistakable warning. You made it everyone's business the moment you barged in here screaming. Evan finally tried to intervene. Maybe we should just go home. No, Madison shut him down with a look. I am not leaving until this gets resolved. She pulled out her phone, her fingers moving rapidly across the screen. What are you doing? I asked. She looked up and smiled, a cold, unsettling expression that made my skin prickle. Calling the police. If you will not listen to reason, maybe they will make you. A shocked murmur rippled through the room. The police? Karen said incredulously. For what? For this, Madison shouted, gesturing wildly. For stealing Christmas from your own family. For hiding assets. For elder abuse. The last accusation hung in the air like poison. I watched my daughter with the phone pressed to her ear, preparing to weaponize law enforcement because I had celebrated Christmas without her permission. Minutes later, the sound of approaching sirens broke the stillness of the night. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, casting an eerie glow across my guests' stunned faces. 2 officers stepped out of the patrol car. One was a seasoned sergeant with graying temples. The other was a younger officer holding a tablet. They approached the door with professional neutrality, though both glanced around at the calm, upscale neighborhood. Good evening, the sergeant said when I opened the door. We received a complaint about excessive noise and a possible domestic disturbance. I am Sergeant Alvarez. This is Officer Reed. Madison pushed forward before I could speak. Yes, thank you for coming. They are throwing this loud party and completely harassing me. The sergeant's experienced eyes scanned the scene. Well-dressed adults holding wine glasses. Soft music playing in the background. No signs of disorder. Ma'am, he said calmly. Please step outside with me for a moment. Sir, is this your residence? Yes, I replied, keeping my tone steady. It is my home. This is a small Christmas dinner with friends and family. Sergeant Alvarez nodded to his partner, who began taking notes. How many people are inside? 10 guests total, I answered. We have been having dinner. Officer Reed glanced at his watch. It is nearly 11 o'clock, and I can barely hear conversation from the driveway. Madison's voice rose, shrill and desperate. It was much louder earlier. They were being completely inappropriate for a residential neighborhood. "Ma'am, what is your relationship to the homeowner?" the sergeant asked calmly. "He is my father," Madison replied quickly, her voice rising. "And he is excluding me from family events. This is elder abuse." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic fog. Behind me, I heard the sharp intake of breath from several of my guests. The sergeant turned to me directly. "Sir, do you feel that you are being abused, coerced, or threatened in any way?" "No, officer," I answered without hesitation. "I am hosting a voluntary dinner with friends and family in my own home." Daniel stepped forward. "Officers, I am Michael's brother. My niece sent him a text message this morning saying she wanted to spend Christmas quietly with her in-laws instead of joining us. So Michael invited people who actually wanted to celebrate with him." "You have that text message?" Officer Reed asked. Daniel pulled out his phone and handed it over, showing the message thread I had forwarded to him earlier. Sergeant Alvarez read it slowly and carefully. "So you declined the invitation in writing," he said, looking back at Madison. "That is not what I meant," she said, her voice cracking with frustration. "He completely misunderstood me. The message seems fairly clear," Officer Reed replied diplomatically. Evan finally spoke up, his voice uneasy. "Maybe we should just go home and talk about this privately." "No," Madison snapped, spinning toward him. "They need to understand that this is wrong." Andrew stepped out from the living room. "Officers, I apologize that you were called out for this. We have been having a very quiet evening. Most of us here are in our 60s and 70s. This is hardly a wild party." The sergeant's expression suggested he had already reached the same conclusion. "Sir, have any neighbors complained about noise tonight?" "Not that I am aware of," I replied. "We have not received any other calls related to this address," Officer Reed confirmed, checking his tablet. Sergeant Alvarez turned back to Madison. "How did you learn about this gathering, ma'am?" "I saw photos online," she admitted. The officers exchanged a brief look that said more than words. "So," the sergeant said carefully, "you filed a noise complaint about an event you learned about through social media." Madison's face flushed red. "It is the principle of it. This is harassment." "Sir," Sergeant Alvarez said to me, "you are well within your rights to host guests in your own home as long as you are not violating local ordinances. Based on what we see, everything here is reasonable." "What about the elder abuse?" Madison demanded, her voice edging toward desperation. The sergeant studied me professionally. "Sir, do you have any concerns about your personal safety or well-being? Are you being pressured or controlled in any way?" "Only by the person who called you," I replied quietly. The slight nod he gave told me he understood exactly what was happening. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "filing false reports is a serious matter. We are going to need you to move your vehicle, which is currently blocking the driveway, and allow these people to continue their evening without further disturbance." Madison stared at him in disbelief, her attempt at manipulation collapsing in on itself. "This is not over," she said to me, though the conviction had drained from her voice. The officers returned to their patrol car, and I watched the red and blue lights fade into the night. Madison remained standing on my doorstep, deflated and exposed. The dismissal by law enforcement had stripped away her confidence, leaving her looking smaller, more uncertain than I had seen her in years. Evan shifted beside her, clearly wishing he could disappear. "Madison," I said quietly, "would you like to come inside and talk privately?" She looked up, surprise flashing across her face, followed by a flicker of hope. Perhaps she believed the police encounter had weakened my resolve. I led her into my home office while Daniel gently guided the guests back toward the living room, giving us the space we needed. Evan stayed behind in the foyer, staring down at his shoes as if they contained the answers to life's hardest questions. "Dad," Madison said the moment I closed the office door. You need to understand something. I sat down behind my desk and waited. I never meant for things to go this far, she continued. That text message, I did not mean it the way you took it. Help me understand what you did mean, I said calmly. She began pacing in front of my bookshelves, gesturing as she spoke. I meant we wanted a quiet Christmas morning with Evan's parents. I always assumed we would see you later for dinner or something. You never mentioned dinner, I replied. You never asked about my plans. I thought it was understood, she said defensively. We always figure something out. I leaned back in my chair, studying her carefully. Madison, when was the last time you called me just to ask how I was doing? Not because you needed something, just to talk. She stopped pacing. That is not fair, she said. It is a simple question, I replied. The silence stretched between us, thick with 3 decades of unexamined habits and assumptions. You are twisting this, she said finally. You are turning it into something it is not. Then what is it about? I asked. She exhaled sharply. It is about you having this beautiful house I never knew existed. It is about you having money you never told me about. How long have you been hiding this from me? There it was. The truth beneath all the anger. Not Christmas dinner. Not family traditions. Control. Access. Fear of losing her personal source of funding. I have not been hiding anything, I said evenly. I have been successful. More successful than you realized. But why did you not tell me? She demanded. I am your daughter. Do I owe you a monthly financial report? I asked. Do my investments require your approval? Her face flushed again. That is not what I mean. I held her gaze unmoved. Then what do you mean? She asked, her voice tight. I mean I need to know you will still be there for me, Madison said. That nothing has changed. Something inside my chest cracked open. After the text message, the confrontation, the police, and the public meltdown, she was still trying to pull me back into the same old arrangement, just dressed up as concern. What if things have changed, Madison? I asked quietly. Her eyes widened. What are you talking about? What if I am exhausted from being treated like a personal bank account? I continued. What if I want a relationship with my daughter that is not built on what I can give her financially? You are being dramatic, she snapped. I do not treat you like a bank account. I took out my phone and scrolled through our message history, then held it up between us. Your last 10 messages to me. Dad, can you help with the car payment? Dad, we need money for the roof repair. Dad, Evan is between jobs again. I looked up at her. When was the last time you texted just to ask how I was feeling? When did you last share good news with me? Or simply say hello? She stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing without sound. I love you, Madison, I said softly. I always will. But I am done enabling a relationship that only flows in one direction. You cannot just cut me off, she said sharply. I am not cutting you off, I replied. I am asking for mutual respect. Her expression hardened. This is Daniel's doing, is it not? He has always been jealous of our relationship. I stood, feeling a deep sense of finality settle into my bones. This has nothing to do with my brother. This is about me finally realizing I deserve better than being taken for granted. She began to cry then, but even her tears felt rehearsed, calculated to soften me rather than reflect genuine remorse. Please, Dad, she whispered. Do not do this. I need you. You need my money, I corrected calmly. There is a difference. I turned toward the door, ready to return to my guests, to the people who valued me for who I was instead of what I could provide. Behind me, I heard her murmur, "This is not over." I caught my reflection in the office window as I walked away. In that moment, I understood clearly that it was. I headed back toward the living room, my decision crystallizing with icy certainty. Behind me, Madison's heels clicked frantically against the hardwood as she followed. The moment we re-entered the main room, she raised her voice. "I need everyone here to understand something," she announced loudly, positioning herself in the center of my guests. "My father has been hiding money from our family for years. Money that should have been disclosed. The room went dead silent. 10 pairs of eyes moved between us, discomfort thick in the air. Madison, I began. No. She cut me off, spinning toward Andrew. Did you know he bought this house without telling his own daughter? $2.8 million. Where do you think that money came from? Andrew lifted an eyebrow. From decades of smart investments and hard work, I would assume. Same place my money comes from. You do not understand, she insisted. He has been manipulating financial records, hiding assets. That is enough, Daniel said firmly, stepping forward. You are making accusations you cannot support. I can support them, she shot back. He has been stealing from family accounts to fund this lifestyle. Rebecca laughed. Not politely, not nervously. She actually laughed. Madison, she said, shaking her head. Your father showed us his investment portfolio 3 years ago when he was considering retirement. Every dollar came from legitimate investments he made decades before you were born. She is right, Jason added. Michael, did you not buy into digital currency when it was under $100? I nodded. My first purchase was in 2011. And the startup investments, Karen added. Multiple companies starting around 2015. 3 went public. 2 were acquired. Madison's face flushed as the math became impossible to ignore. My wealth was not hidden, stolen, or mysterious. It was documented and witnessed by people who had known me for decades. But he never told me, she protested weakly. Why would he? Emily spoke for the first time, her voice sharp and clear. You have never shown interest in his life unless you needed something from him. The truth landed hard. Even Evan shifted uncomfortably, finally seeing how his wife appeared to others. That is not true, Madison said, her voice cracking. I have always cared about my father. When? Daniel asked bluntly. When was the last time you called to ask about his health? His happiness? His plans? Silence. When was the last time you invited him to your home for dinner? Rebecca added. More silence. When was the last time you celebrated one of his achievements without calculating what you could get from it? Andrew asked. The question hit her like a physical blow. Madison looked around the room, realizing she was completely alone. Even her husband could not meet her eyes. You do not understand our relationship, she whispered desperately. We understand it perfectly, I said quietly. And that is the problem. I inhaled slowly, feeling the weight of 30 years finally lift from my shoulders. I want both of you to leave my home and never return. The words dropped into absolute silence. She stared at me as if I had spoken another language. You cannot be serious. I have never been more serious about anything in my life. Her eyes widened with genuine shock. Dad, you cannot mean that. I am your daughter. You are a grown woman who has used me for 30 years without giving anything back. I replied evenly. Being my daughter does not entitle you to unlimited access to my money or unlimited tolerance for disrespect. I walked toward the foyer, expecting them to follow. When they did not move, I turned back. Leave, I said. This is insane, Madison shrieked. You are destroying our family over nothing. Nothing, Daniel said incredulously. You called the police on your own father for hosting a dinner. You accused him of elder abuse in front of officers, Rebecca added. You barged into his home uninvited and attacked him publicly, Andrew said, his disgust unmistakable. Each statement struck like a hammer. Madison looked desperately around the room for support. Evan, tell them. Tell them this is wrong. Her husband studied her for a long moment, then looked at me. Madison, we should go. You too? She whispered, her voice breaking. You are taking his side as well. I am not taking sides, Evan said quietly. I am not taking sides, Evan said quietly. I am acknowledging reality. His voice sounded exhausted, worn down to the truth. He is right, Madison. We both know he is. I walked to the front door and pulled it open. Cold December air rushed inside, sharp and clean, cutting through the tension like a blade. I have spent 30 years enabling behavior that hurt both of us, I said evenly. I will not spend whatever time I have left being treated like a bank account with a heartbeat. I will change, Madison pleaded, her voice cracking. I promise. I will be different. I will show appreciation. I will call more. You had 30 years to change, I replied calmly. Tonight proved you cannot. Her face twisted with desperation. But I am your daughter. I am a human being who deserves basic respect. I agree, I said. And that is exactly what you have never shown me. She looked around the room one last time, searching for support. She found none. Only rigid expressions, averted eyes, and slow shakes of disappointed heads. You will regret this, she said, her voice turning cold. All of you will regret taking his side when you finally see what kind of man he really is. We already know what kind of man he is, Emily said firmly. We have known for decades. That is why we are here. Daniel stepped beside me at the open doorway. Madison, you need to leave now. She walked toward the exit, Evan trailing behind her, his shoulders slumped with embarrassment. At the threshold, she turned back one final time. This is not over, Dad. I will not let you cut me out of your life like this. Yes, I said quietly. It is over. And you cut yourself out the moment you chose manipulation over love. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt with a firm, final click. The sound of their car starting and pulling away felt like the end of one life and the beginning of another. Behind me, the low murmur of conversation slowly resumed. My friends, my real family, returned to their celebration. For the first time in 30 years, my home was filled only with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. I stood in the foyer for a moment, my hands still resting on the lock, absorbing the magnitude of what had just happened. 30 years of enabling, 30 years of walking on eggshells, 30 years of being treated like a resource instead of a person. The weight I had carried for so long finally lifted, like fog burning off the desert mountains at sunrise. When I turned back toward the living room, I found my friends watching me with expressions I had not seen directed at me in years. Pride, respect, admiration. Michael, Rebecca said softly. That took incredible courage. Andrew stood and began clapping, slow and deliberate. One by one, the others joined him until the room filled with genuine applause. Not for a performance, but for a man who had finally chosen self-respect. You handled that with far more grace than she deserved, Karen added. Daniel stepped forward and wrapped me in a tight embrace. His voice was thick with emotion. I have waited 30 years for you to do that. I am so proud of you. The validation washed over me. These people had witnessed everything. They had seen Madison's behavior for what it was and recognized the moment I finally stopped accepting it. Emily lifted her wine glass. To Michael Harper, she said, a man who chose dignity over guilt and peace over chaos. To authentic relationships, Jason added. To knowing your worth, Rebecca said. We drank, and I felt something I had not experienced in decades. The simple, profound joy of being valued for who I was, not what I could give. Daniel pulled me aside as the others continued celebrating. How do you feel? He asked. Free, I said without hesitation. For the first time in my adult life, I feel completely free. You are not losing a daughter tonight, he said gently. You are gaining your life back. He was right. The woman who had just left was not the little girl I taught to ride a bike. That child had been replaced long ago by someone who saw me only as a funding source. She had made her choice decades earlier. Tonight, Daniel said quietly, you finally made yours. Karen approached us. Michael, I owe you an apology. For what? I asked. For all the times over the years I wanted to say something about how she treated you and stayed silent. We all saw it. We all knew you deserved better. Andrew nodded. We should have spoken up sooner. Watching you stand up for yourself tonight, that was powerful. The conversation gradually shifted toward the future. A future without toxic family dynamics poisoning every holiday. What would Christmas look like next year? What about New Year's Eve? My birthday? You should host New Year's here, Emily suggested. A celebration of new beginnings. I would love that, I said, realizing I truly meant it. And your birthday in March, Rebecca added. A proper celebration for a man who finally gets to be celebrated. For the first time in years, I felt genuine excitement about future gatherings. No more walking on eggshells. No more bracing for the next demand. Just honest relationships built on mutual respect. I cannot believe I actually did it, I said quietly. Believe it, Daniel replied. You chose yourself tonight. You chose peace. Around 2:30 in the morning, people began collecting their coats. The night had been emotionally heavy, and dawn was not far off. Thank you, I said to each of them as they prepared to leave. For witnessing this. For supporting me. For being my real family. The hugs were longer, warmer than usual. These were not social obligations. They were bonds forged in truth. When the last car disappeared down the street, I walked back into my villa. It was finally, truly, my sanctuary. The house felt different now, almost larger, as if removing the toxic energy had physically expanded the space. I walked slowly from room to room, aware that for the first time, every corner truly belonged to me. There was no guilt hanging in the air. No manipulation lurking beneath conversations. No invisible strings attached to my every decision. Back in the kitchen, where this entire chain of events had started less than a day earlier, I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and stood by the window overlooking the garden. The landscape lights still glimmered softly like scattered stars, but now they illuminated opportunity rather than just expensive stone and manicured plants. My phone vibrated with a message. From Rebecca. Thank you for showing us what real courage looks like. Sleep well, my friend. Another followed almost immediately. From Andrew. Your home will always be a place of respect and warmth. Rest easy tonight. Then Emily. Call us anytime. You are not alone. We are your family now. Each message wrapped around me like a quiet, reassuring embrace. They were confirmation, not that I needed it anymore, that I had made the right decision. I thought about everything I had built, the investments, the villa, the financial independence I had worked decades to achieve. For the first time, it all felt fully mine, not something to justify, explain, or ration in hopes of keeping someone else satisfied. I could travel now, freely. I could finally take that river cruise through Europe I had always postponed, walk through vineyards in Italy, spend a week learning to cook in France. The world felt open again, in a way it had not since my younger years. Or I could stay right here and turn this villa into the home I had always imagined. A place filled with laughter instead of tension, gratitude instead of expectation, love without obligation. The eastern windows slowly began to glow as the first hint of sunrise crept across the sky. Christmas Eve had arrived, and for the first time in 30 years, I felt genuine anticipation instead of dread. No walking on eggshells. No obsessing over gifts that might still be criticized. No calculating how much money would be enough to buy peace. Just the simple joy of celebrating with people who truly wanted to be present. My phone rang again. Daniel, how are you doing? He asked gently. Better than I have felt in decades. I answered honestly. I keep waiting for the guilt to show up, but it has not. It will not, he said without hesitation. Guilt only exists when you have done something wrong. Tonight, all you did was protect your dignity. I think I will spend Christmas Day by myself, I said. Not lonely, just alone. There is a difference, he replied, and you have earned peaceful solitude. After we hung up, I stepped out onto the terrace as the sun rose fully above the horizon. The December air was crisp and clean, carrying the quiet promise of new seasons still to come. At 63, I was finally beginning an authentic life. The years ahead no longer looked like obligations stacked end to end. They looked like choices. Respect. Joy. Possibility. I made a mental note to call a travel agent later that day. Maybe Ireland in the spring, or Australia during their autumn. The freedom to make plans without checking someone else's emotional weather felt revolutionary. As the sunrise washed the villa in warm gold, The truth settled into me with absolute clarity. This was not just Christmas morning. It was the first day of my real life. I had chosen dignity over duty, peace over chaos, self-respect over misplaced loyalty. And for the first time, it felt like I had finally come home to myself. The greatest gift I had ever given myself was the courage to demand the respect I had spent 63 years earning. At last, Christmas had truly come home.